Let's begin. Hello boys and girls, I'm TheFlyingTeaCup, and I've gotten interested in cut content from different games, and wonder if there's something that was cut from Titanfall 2. And oh boy, there's a lot. I've taken some of the more interesting features that was cut from Titanfall 2, both in the single player but also in the multiplayer. Most of these features are mentioned in the art book The Art of Titanfall 2 and the series Respawn Plays, in which the developers sit down and play the game while giving commentary on the development process. I highly recommend you to check it out if you're interested for more. Now, let's begin. In the beginning of the development of the campaign, there was a difficulty slider that wouldn't just change the amount of damage the player would take and how strong the enemy forces were. It would actually change the actual platforming challenges in the level. This was made for the missions that required the player to be able to perform actions like wall running to make it easier for the players by changing the geometry of the stage so that less experienced players could progress through the campaign. This was cut due to taking too much time to adjust and optimize every mission to the different levels, says Jason McCord. Throughout the development of BT, there was another way to switch your loadouts. When an enemy titan died, they would drop their chassis loadout, which you could pick up to change your own. This worked very well and made a lot of sense. Despite that, this was changed due to it being very confusing for new playtesters when all their abilities were changed and nothing was alike from the loadout they had before. It was later changed to the list function as we know today. There were a lot of changes to the missions as well. In the beginning of the intro sequence to the mission BT-7274, when you play as a grunt, you were supposed to stay a grunt for a longer time, according to Roger Abrahamson. He said that they wanted to give the player the experience of being a grunt to later contrast the feeling of being a pilot. This was shortened down drastically, as Abrahamson explains. We changed our mind and decided that we wanted to be able to play the real game faster. In the beginning of the chapter Affecting Cause, after the player has retrieved Anderson's helmet, BT throws a lamppost to the top of a building for the player to zipline up. Originally, this was not the case. In earlier drafts, BT would throw the player to the top floor. This was changed because the placement of the chapter The Beacon was originally before Affecting Cause and would make more sense for BT to throw the player instead of giving them a zipline. In memory of this, the player can say to BT after throwing the lamppost, "Maybe next time you could throw me," in which BT answers "noted" and foreshadows the events in the next chapter.
Nice. Maybe next time you can throw me. Noted.
When Affecting Cause was in really early development, the storyline was completely different. BT would already have sacrificed himself as he does in the end of the campaign, and Cooper would find the IMC facility by himself and steal the time-traveling device. He would have BT's data core with him, as well as some blueprints for his chassis to rebuild them in secret. After the construction of BT was complete, they would attempt to travel back in time. The problem would be that BT couldn't travel back and would be stuck in the past. Cooper would hide him in a nearby cave and then travel back to the future to retrieve him. This was a clear reference to Back to the Future 3. This was not the only plot that they come up with for Affecting Cause. In another version of the story, you would travel to the future and back to prevent mass destruction, but this storyline was dropped as well. It's not confirmed why these storylines were scrapped, but it was most likely due to them being too complex and ambitious. In an earlier version of the Beacon, you were originally going to be assisted by another pilot that came from the 6-4. This was changed while the Beacon was worked on, and this concept eventually moved on to the mission The Ark, where you can see Gates, Beard, Davis and Rose from the 6-4 helping you out. In Trial by Fire, there was supposed to be more to the elevator section than it is in the final game. When you would reach the elevator, a door would close, which forced the player and BT to split. Sarah and the player would run around and kill different IMC grunts and eventually reach a panel which would open up the door and lower the elevator for BT and Mob. Though on your way back you would see a Legion go down in the elevator to ambush BT and Mob. The player and Sarah would have to defeat the Legion while in the elevator and then get help from BT and Mob. This was cut due to time constraints and led to the calm bonding moment between Sarah and Cooper.
Well, you're doing a good job, Cooper. And as far as I'm concerned, you've earned your pilot certification.
In an early stage of development, Cooper wasn't always the protagonist that the player would control in the campaign. Some early concept art shows that the player was able to choose what gender the protagonist was supposed to have. The female model had a blue jumpsuit and a tattoo of a dream catcher on her hand. There are no signs that this character got a name before she was scrapped. Sadly, this concept didn't get past the concept art stage due to time constraints and build logistics, as former art director Joel Emsley explains. It's unknown if this decision would impact the story or if it would only be a sort of voice alternation for Cooper. A character that has never been mentioned and was cut from Titanfall 2's story is the Simulacrum Pole. It's unknown how long in development he came before it was cut or what his function was. The only description we have is this. He wears his jacket kefe as a poignant symbol of his former human self. He has a body of a phase shift pilot, though a similar head to a stim pilot. Even though he was cut from the campaign, he can be seen in a banner called Ghost from the Past. If the name is a reference to what his role was in the campaign, then it's possible that he would appear in the chapter affecting cause. He's also shown in the same pages as Apex Predators in the art of Titanfall 2, which can hint that he was supposed to be a part of the Apex Predators. It's possible that he was cut due to time constraints as well as being too similar to Ash. Before Titanfall 2 was released, an action figure which looked like a phase shift pilot called Jester was purchasable from stores which depicted him as a new character in Titanfall 2. The only description we have of him is this. An enigmatic independent bounty hunter who communicates with clients via proxies. Jester is an experimental IMC simulacrum based on a deceased, highly decorated IMC operative who volunteered for the program. Jester does not know he's a simulacrum and is programmed to believe that he's the original IMC operative, but without any self-awareness of normal human limitations. Based on this somewhat detailed description, we can only assume that he was cut due to being unimportant or disposable for the main plot for Titanfall 2, but was cut very late in development. Because his description says that he's an experimental simulacrum, he could have provided a lore-based answer to why the IMC and soon after the militia turned to make simulacrums in the first place. Alright, that's enough for the single player. Let's move on to the multiplayer. A concept of a possible pilot class is present in the art of Titanfall 2 on the page 44, where a character called Edgewielder is equipped with a sword and what looks like an alternator. This idea got pretty far in development and was potentially supposed to be released with the Operation Frontier Shield update. Further on in the art book, there are multiple designs for both Ronin swords, but also smaller swords that the Edgewielder was supposed to carry. Traces of this ability are still left in the code and can be accessed if certain game files are modified, though this can only be used in the single player. This was discovered and showcased by the data miner called Shampooh, who showcased the ability and other upgradable functions for normal tacticals that would be present in the Frontier Defense mode. If you're interested, then check the link in the description. A weapon called the Fukuda battle rifle was a pilot weapon that didn't get past the testing stage for unknown reasons. It might have been due to the gun not being unique enough or just impractical. From the concept art, we can see that it will support an iron sight and what looks like a long distance scope. It also supports a hand grip and a stabilizer. It looks like a combination of the Cold War R101 carbine and a G2. Based on these factors, this might have been a pilot-sized railgun assault rifle mix due to it having multiple hints of being a sniper rifle but a model after an assault rifle. The name Fukuda is a reference to the game director for the Titanfall series, Steve Fukuda. While coming up with new designs for the Titans in Titanfall 2, there was a Titan that was cut from the final release. This Titan chassis was called Bison. Based on concept art, Bison seemed to be a melee brawler that would throw some sort of electrical punches. Other abilities regarding the Titan is unknown. Bison was an Ogre class Titan and has not been seen using a specific weapon. He has two different designs, which one of them is very similar to Scorch Prime, though with a much more spherical cockpit and lighter plating on his legs. The other design looks like a very beefed up Atlas chassis, but other than that is left unknown. Based on his presence in the art book of Titanfall 2, he seemed to be cut in mid to late development. Even though Brute wasn't completely cut from the game, it was cut from the multiplayer. It wasn't actually designed to be in the multiplayer from the beginning and was on the verge of being cut completely. This is the reason why Brute has the chassis and abilities from Northstar. The team didn't want to design a new Titan if it wasn't playable nor a part of the multiplayer. But the reason why it wasn't cut was due to it being fantastic for new players to experience the Vortex shield in the campaign and also having a high damage rocket launcher that would clear out Titans and smaller infantry. During the tech test in the summer of 2016, players could try out Titanfall 2's multiplayer before the game was released in October of the same year. During the production of these builds, a lot of things has changed compared to the final release. In the beginning, the phase shift model would use the grapple hook, while the grapple model was used for phase shift. The cloak pilot used the same model that is now known as the AWOL, and the stim and holo pilot has remained the same since that build of the game. Though the post-play model was completely removed from the multiplayer in the final release and was altered to later become the character Viper from the campaign. That is a lot of cut content from Titanfall 2, and that wasn't even all of it. This was just some of the cut content that I found interesting and quite cool. If you want, then you can keep searching for yourself. If you find anything, then please tell me in the comments. So what do you think about all this cut content? Is there something that you would rather have in the final game? Leave a comment and tell me. And with that said, thanks for watching and take care.